welcome you all for our very first virtual mentor meetup. We hope that you really enjoy it. I think you will love hearing from our speaker today, who is alumna Cheree Davis, Education 2016. I'm really pleased because I have the honor of introducing her and kicking us off today. I'm going to give you a few little tidbits about her and then turn it over so that you can actually hear about her really amazing journey and all of her wonderful accomplishments directly from her, which is far more interesting. My name is Elena Thompson. I work in the Central Alumni Relations Office at Hopkins, and I oversee our affinity engagement program, so our affinity groups and communities, and have the really great opportunity to know Cheree through our Alumni Council, of which she is an active member. She has over 18 years of education experience, and quite a long resume. So just some of the highlights. Okay. She is currently supervisor of leadership development and is an assistant principal with the Baltimore County Public School System. She is, in addition to that, I don't know how she has time for all of this, is also an adjunct faculty member of the Johns Hopkins School of Education. And as I said, a really wonderful volunteer. We're really, really grateful that you are taking time today to talk with everyone and to share your story. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say. And I know everybody else does too. So I'm going to turn things over to you, Cheree. Thank you so much.
Oh, wow. Wow. Thank you, Elena. Good afternoon, everybody. As she said, and so they call me Cheree. I answer to Cheree. It is Cheree. I just wanted to clarify, and it's okay. I answer to it, and that's the problem. But good afternoon, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here, to be with you virtually. I feel connected to you virtually, believe it or not. And I hope by the end of our talk today and our engagement today, you'll feel the same way. I must say, I am giving this talk today from my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. I am from Cleveland, Ohio. And ironically, I had to be here for a little while, and this fell on that day, which is such a privilege and such an honor for me. I know, Casey, we have my PowerPoint available. If you could just get that up for us, that would be great.
That is coming right now.
Okay, sorry. So I've given a few talks in my 20 years. And, you know, I always tell people I don't really write speeches because I believe whatever I'm doing and whatever I'm speaking about, it comes from a true and authentic place for me. And so I'm fortunate that I don't have to like fumble with notes and things like that. But I am going to ask you, if you're on right now and you don't have a journal book or a notepad, I want you to get one. And I imagine if you're doing this on a Saturday, a beautiful Saturday, you probably already have one. But if you don't, I'm encouraging you to get one. I'm hoping that, you know, by the end of our discussion today, that you take away from this something that you need. And I know we asked some questions around what it is you hope to get from today. So if you haven't listed that in the chat, I'm asking you to please do that. What is something that you hope to get from today? I cannot see you and I cannot hear you. I see a question came through for that. I cannot see you or hear you, but please type your answer in the chat.
So we've got the poll going and the answers are coming in now. It looks like about half of folks have voted.
Oh, wow, great,
and
great.
We'll give that a few more seconds for the votes to come in before we end the polling.
And the reason I asked that question is, I believe in every moment, there's this opportunity for connection. And when you come to a talk, obviously you come to hear the speaker. But I come to a talk hoping to extract from you what you need. And hopefully that is how we connect through this platform. And so I'm very curious to know what you hope to get from today. And I'm hoping that I can deliver at the same time. So we just give a few more minutes for people to respond. And I'm seeing folks with timestamps of 1:30 a.m. Renat, wow, thank you for waking up that early, wherever you're from.
So it looks like, given our choice of options, 10% of people hope to learn how to connect, 32% want to learn more about mentoring, 20% want to learn more about career advancement, 3% want to learn about managing stress, 25% want understanding of networking options, how to connect, who to connect with, and 10% are other things.
Wonderful. That's a great mix. And I think what I've prepared today could get us there. So let's get started. So, I'll talk a little bit about my experience. And as I said before, I hail from Cleveland, Ohio. My undergraduate was at Kent State University. And soon after graduating from Kent State University, I moved to Maryland, where I have built my life and my entire career. But I will tell you, making the decision to go to college was for me like a huge jump out of an airplane, Casey, if you will. And it felt a little bit like this. And notice the parachutes, and so you're going to hear me talk about my leap, your leap. When we talk about mentoring, when we're talking about networking and connecting, and, when do we know it's time to advance our career? When do we know when it's the best time to do that? But it's often going to feel like a leap. Do you remember your leap? And one thing I hope you wonder, or I wonder, is were you leaping or were you pushed? Were you pushed out the plane? And I ask that because first generation college goers or first generation anything from anywhere, there is something that moved us. There's something that moved us from that place where we were to where we were trying to go. And so when you think about it, I'm going to talk to you, when you talk about networking and connections with people, I'm going to speak a little bit about that parachute that those guys that each of them have. Because to me, every connection that I've made, every person that I have connected with at various levels throughout my career, they are a thread in my parachute. So I'm hoping that when you leave this talk today, you get the answers you're looking for on some level, and that you start tightening up the threads of your own parachutes, especially during this time. As I prepare for this talk, just like all of you, I had CNN on mute in the background, and I don't need to speak to it, but for some of us, some of our first generation students are living in the very communities where some of these things are occurring. And so when we define the term first generation, I want to be clear as the way in which I will refer to it. First generation for me, is anyone who came from a family that did not have someone already earn a college degree. I spent 10 years as a teacher in Baltimore City Public Schools, huge leap for me. In that time, 50 to 70% of my students were first generation high school graduates. So they were taking big leaps. Some were pushed, some were jumped. And I used to tell them they considered me a thread in their parachutes and trust me. And I would offer you on this slide, in this particular slide, I want you to trust the people you have around you, the people who see something in you, the people who will give you advice. Because once you take this leap, you're going to need to trust someone. Casey? Some famous first generation folks. I mean, this speaks for itself, but look down the list and what do you notice about the list? What do you notice? Did you notice that all of them are pretty famous, right? Right. I'm with you, like we're just normal folks. These are pretty famous people here. What do you think it felt like for them to start to try and network, to reach out to others to say, well, I think I want to be a Supreme Court judge, or I think I want to be a gold medal figure skater, or the first African-American president, or I want to be the Secretary of State, or my idol, right, is Oprah Winfrey. What kind of networking questions, who were they talking to? Who were they looking up to? And what's interesting about our talk today and the way in which I hope we connect once we start chatting is we don't know who can help us get to where it is that we're trying to go. But when I look at this list of first generation, famous first generation folks, I can only imagine the kind of support that they were trying to garner from every layer of their life. So you're at this point in your life, if you are a college graduate, currently a student, excuse me, or someone who is just trying to figure out what's next for me. You know, I always tell my daughter, who is somewhere in this chat, she's on here somewhere. I always tell her that I'm never just comfortable in the moment. The moment can feel great, but I always feel like I'm preparing for something else. And I'm hoping you sit in your moment. But every first generation person on this list right here, I guarantee you, they felt the same way at some point, because you don't achieve something like that without believing that you're going to go somewhere other than where you are. So one of the things I would offer you when you think about, you know, how do I build a connection or a network? Look around you, look at the people around you. And this is no secret. Many people have said this before, but look around you. Who is where you're trying to go? Who is knowledgeable of where you're trying to go? Or who represents another aspect of your life that can help you get where you're trying to go? And when I look at this list, I wonder about Michelle Obama's mentors, right? Who were her mentors? Oh my gosh. I wonder who Howard Schultz's mentors were. Who's to take coffee to this level? Who was he talking to? Well, for me, I always looked around to where I was. So I spent some time in Baltimore City Public Schools as a teacher. But before that, as an undergraduate at Kent State, I found someone, his name was Mr. Moore, actually, Professor Moore. I found someone who helped me figure out who I was early on in the process. I'm sure all of these famous first gens did too. You probably already have someone like that, especially if you ended up at the doorstep of Johns Hopkins University as a first generation college goer. Casey? You can advance it, I'm sorry. There you go. When you start this process, and you've already started it, and congratulations to you. And I'm sorry if I failed to acknowledge our new graduates, our current graduates. Congratulations, class of 2020. You definitely have come through some challenges, especially the last part of your journey to reach your graduation milestones. I hope you're starting to build your toolkit. Now, I've got some interesting things in my toolkit, and I'll explain one of them. Fear was in my toolkit, and it still is. As a first generation college goer, fear was a driver for me. The fear of failure, the fear of not being enough, the fear of going to my first networking event. What do I say to people? Do I look too anxious? Am I talking too much? But it is always in my toolkit. It is also my reminder, like it sits on my shoulder. Tenacity is in my toolkit. I have learned this about myself. I didn't know this at first, but the tenacity in me makes it so that I never really give up on something. You know, I read, someone posted something recently on Instagram, and it said, Don't let perfection keep you from doing something or delay you doing something. In some ways, I'm a perfectionist. I'm learning to let go. I hope you do the same. But as a classroom teacher in Baltimore City for 10 years and becoming, 3-time teacher of the year, Oprah Winfrey Ambassador teacher, it was because I had the fear of failing my students or myself. And of course, I put forth a lot of tenacity in everything that I did. And once you do that, that third item in my toolkit is crucial, and that's confidence. Not arrogance, confidence. And to have this talk solely be about me, it was awkward a little bit. And if you are someone, and I hear this a lot in a lot of people that I interview, they are nervous around that question when we say, why should we hire you over someone else? Can you explain that right now? If someone said to you right now, why should we hire you over someone else? Could you answer that in 30 seconds or less? If you can't, I hope you work on that. Get your elevator speech. Confidence can take you further than competence. Confidence can take you further than competence. Because if you are like me, I'm a quick learner, I'll pick up on something, but you gotta have the confidence to step in it, to step forward before you'll ever give yourself an opportunity at something. The last thing I'm gonna speak about, it actually earned its own slide. It's called student agency. And in research, I had the great fortune of working 6 years at the Center for Social Organization of Schools, which is right here at Johns Hopkins University. In that capacity, it took me all over the United States of America to do this work of school turnaround work. And if you don't know school turnaround work, I only speak to it a little bit, but school turnaround work essentially means that these are the lowest failing schools in America, essentially. They have the most high school dropouts. My boss actually turned them, my old boss turned them, high school dropout factories when he was testifying before Congress. In that work, we had to figure out a way to help students and teachers and families be successful, which is what I try to do every single day as a school leader. Student agency is when you are able to set advantageous goals for yourself and for others. And then you take action, and then you're able to reflect on it and regulate your practices around your actions. And then finally, promote self-efficacy. Now, I'm only defining this for you because I know that I would not have otherwise been able to achieve any of my goals in my personal life or professional life if I did not practice agency. It is the single most important thing in self-regulated learning for students in schools at any level, high school, college, etc., preschool. Kids who exhibit this or people who exhibit this agency is able to accomplish, they are able to accomplish a lot more. If you haven't explored that for yourself, I'm gonna offer you that. So in this book, and this is my book, this is really my book, and right now it's a lot of stuff in here, y'all. And in this book, some goals are in there, but a lot of my ideas are in there. Are you an ideas person? If you are, and you feel like you don't have anywhere for your ideas to go other than your head, I'm gonna ask you to take action, set a goal, take an action, and start writing it down. And then reflect it and refine on it. But then I want you to add at least one practice to it. Example, if your goal is to learn how to network, well, email has been my friend. When I worked at Hopkins regular full-time, and I often read the newspapers that come out from Hopkins, the Hopkins magazine. I'm a reader, so things that come in the email, I really do read them. And so I might see somebody sign off on something, even though they may not have written it or created it, they sign their name because they're the head of the department. If I know that that's something that I want to do one day, I'll email them. we had a vice provost who has since left Hopkins. She now works at American University, is the Dean of the School of Education at American University. She had written something, and I saw it in the Hopkins magazine, and I wrote her an email, and I said, "Hi, you don't know me. My name is Cheree Davis. I do this work, and I see that you've done similar work, in this area. Would you happen to have 30 minutes to talk to me about it?" She was so excited. I couldn't figure out why, because she didn't know me. I was no one. And I'm thinking, why is she so excited? She gave me 30 minutes, and it was like in between something. I took my lunch. I went over to her office with my pad and paper, asked about my research, which is what I was asking about. And then I was intrigued by the things that were on her walls. And I don't know about you, but whenever I'm in somebody's office, I'm always looking on their bookshelf. I want to see what they're reading, what's there. So I'm looking at her books, and it just triggered me to ask her a few other questions, because she seemed to represent a lane that I wanted to one day be in. And so I asked her one question, and that question was, how did you find yourself in this position? It wasn't about me, but I was asking her about her, because I knew once she shared that with me, that was a connection that we would have. And so once she told me a little bit about her story. She's very personable, as I am. And she spoke about her upbringing and her family. And when she did that, that resonated with me, because I was able to speak about my grandma, my upbringing. Now, go back to student agency. I didn't necessarily walk in her office with a goal, but once you set a goal to do something, it should always be with you wherever you are, whatever you're doing. My goals were with me that day. I took action, though, by sending her an email. Now, when I leave somebody's office like that, the first thing I'm thinking about is, what action will I take as a result of this? It sounds simple, but we don't ask ourselves that. If you find that you are in a meeting or an office, or have spoken with someone that has moved you in a way, or spoken to your goals, your personal goals for yourself, then you have to figure out what action you are going to apply to that thought. And then how are you going to promote it? So one thing my daughter probably can't stand, because I'm always talking about what I'm doing or an idea that I have. Like, I'll go knock on her door. You know what I was thinking? I do that all the time. And the reason I do it is because I believe it is putting my goals and my actions in motion. The more I hear it, the more I speak it, the more comfortable it is with me. It sits with me. And then there I am building my confidence. And then it gives me the courage to reach out to somebody, which builds a stronger thread in my parachute. Casey? Sorry, Casey, there you go. So here's some things that just really, really helped me. I wasn't a good networker. I always felt like my hard work will show up and somebody will contact me. Not quite. That happens, but not quite. I had to figure out how to network. I don't look at networking like going out, having a drink, talking. A lot of people do. In education, it is about who we know, right? But what I have found to be true is networking can take on different forms. You can search for like-minded individuals, form your own network. Meetup, I think, has been a wonderful way to do that, because it's not quite a formal event. In some cases it is, but it's just people who want to get together and talk about something that they're all passionate about. My passion drives me, if you can't tell. And so I tend to like to be around people who are driven by their passion and aren't afraid to say it. Like, it's out front, shows up in everything that they do. And so I look for networking opportunities in that way. But I'm also a service-oriented person. And so I have given back to the community. I've earned Maryland Pride Awards. I've traveled the world to give back to former Soviet Union countries. But in that, and I'll speak just briefly to that experience. I was in Armenia, of all places, Armenia, Yerevan, Armenia, and 10 former Soviet Union countries. And all of these people were similar to me in career stature, but yet I was there to present to all of them. Every night was a networking opportunity. And I don't know about you, but I'm in my hotel room trying to figure out what to wear, what am I gonna say? Do I take business cards? And so I just decided to just show up. I didn't take any business cards. By the end of the night, I had to go back to my room and get some because people were asking me. But what I wanted in that moment was to see people and have people see me, right? And so that came through conversation and interpreters, of course. So when you go to network with people, if you don't know the first thing to say, just talk about maybe the event that you were in or why you all are in that space to begin, like something small, then it opens up to a larger conversation. But when you gotta take the leap to network though. You gotta take that leap. LinkedIn and all of those other ways to network with people. I tell people all the time, like if you go look for me on LinkedIn right now, my LinkedIn looks terrible. I'm gonna fix it because I did just start a business, so I need to fix it. But some people start conversations there, and I see it as a very busy place. Post-COVID, I'm hoping that we will still get back to authentic connections sometimes in some instances with people, but this may have to be the way in which we communicate and connect, like what we're doing right now. Email is your friend, and I think I said that before. Email is your friend. Use it, especially right now. Introduce yourself. Let me tell you what it's like to receive a message like that. And, at 48 and almost 20 years in my career, I can honestly say that I've received these emails now from people who say, hi, I saw your YouTube talk and I was wondering this. I'm just a counselor, or I'm just graduating from college, and I just want to know if you could give me some advice on this. The first thing that comes to my mind when people do that is, this person is courageous. This person took a leap. This person trusted me with sharing a little bit about who they were so that I could help them in one way or another. It is how I met one of my mentors, Dr. Annette Anderson, who was Associate Dean at Johns Hopkins. One night I was thinking about my next move, thinking about my next career, and I knew that she worked in schools. And I did not know her. I had her card. I dug it out after about 1.5 years of having it. And late at night, attached my resume and said, hello, my name is Cheree Davis. I met you at this and blah, 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 blah. And I said, if you know of any opportunities or anything, please let me know. She wrote me back within 24 hours. And I thought, oh my goodness. But it took a lot for me to email her. And so don't be afraid to do that. But if you do, give that person a little bit more about you. Don't just say, hey, can we talk? Attach your resume. Tell them what you're currently doing. And then that would give them more to go on when they decide, hey, I'm going to talk to this person. Always have someone you can call and ask a question. So in order to prepare for my talk today, I spent a lot of time looking at research. I did. I'm a researcher. And when I looked at it, of course, I learned the basics. 1/3 of all college students, right, in 2018 were first-time college goers. We graduate at a much lower rate than others. But then when I started reading another article, it spoke to how first-generation college goers tend not to know which questions to ask. And this is where I felt like I needed the most help. So as I started sort of building my network, my threads and my parachute, if you get time with somebody, you got to ask the right questions. They don't usually have a lot of time, right? Especially if someone is very busy or a high-ranking person. So I would highly suggest that you know what it is that you want to know. Now, if you need guidance on knowing what to know, then say that, because then the person will know how to sort of advise you and support you, but always have somebody that you can call. If you don't have that right now, today, I want you to think back. I want you to think back to the last thing you did, the last professor you had. I know for my students, every class that I've taught at Hopkins has ended, and I feel like I've just gained a whole new group of friends and people to network with. Not everybody that you network with and ask questions of is somebody that is above you or ahead of you. So understand that. Even though I said look for people who are where you want to go, I also think everybody around you can be a resource to getting you where you're trying to go. When you do have that quadrant of people, I want you to know, who can I call when I want to know about big systems thinking? Who can I call when I want to learn about where I should acquire my superintendent license? It's so important that you have that. And I sort of write it down, because the list might change. It might be people you don't talk to anymore. So make sure that you are keeping track of the people who sort of come in and out of your lives. Go back to your professors. And hopefully, at Hopkins, you've had a professor that has really made an impression on you, or you built a relationship with. Don't be afraid to go back to them. Remember, this moment is moving, so move with it. I'm going to say that again. Remember that this moment is moving, and you must move with it. I don't know about you, but I came from a place where acquiring something meant a lot. And then once you acquired it, keeping it the same and keeping it there meant a lot. And I'm thinking about my dad right now, who does the same thing the same way all the time. Probably will never change it. But what I have learned in my 20 years of education and 20 years of being a mom and everything else is, when you have big goals and big dreams, and I do now, I didn't have them before. All I wanted to do was my best before. I didn't have them. I realized that the target keeps moving. Oprah reminds me of that. Just when I'm thinking, well, she's the queen of media, she is, right? But now it's literally all aspects of it, online, network, etc., because her target moves and she moves with it. And for me, I had to learn how to do that. That means change, because that's the only thing that's constant. And in schools, everything changes. So change agents, change leaders, change makers, we all have to be comfortable with moving. But you got to have a good understanding of where you are right now in your career. Do you consider yourself at a crucial juncture in your career? Perhaps you do. If you do, and you're saying, what's next for me? I'm stuck. I'm trying to move with my life, but my life isn't moving. Then I'm going to invite you to take some deep reflection. Why isn't your life moving? And it seems like a simple question. You might say, well, I don't have the answer to that. But if you're looking for somebody else to answer it for you, that's not a good thing either. So I want you to take inventory. Have you chosen to do something that's not serving you well as a professional? Are you in a situation where I'm just doing this to get by right now? And perhaps we are, right? Did you do a major that, oof, I wish I wouldn't have done this now? Or are you only saying that because you didn't achieve what you wanted? Don't be afraid to move the target or the goal related to your career, and try and get comfortable with moving with it. And then finally, when it comes to just trying to figure out how to, make that next decision, think what if often. What if I just did this? What if I do that all the time? And I don't tell people. I do it and I say, what if I emailed this person? Nah, I better not. What if I called this person? Nah, I better not. I question myself all the time. The only difference between me and maybe somebody else that questions themselves all the time, I actually answer and then I do something. And it's a leap of faith. I pace the floor after I do it. Oh no, what if they don't call me back? What if they don't email me back? I felt that way with my company. What if I launched a consulting company? I just recently launched a consulting company called CRD Consulting. You can find me on Instagram and on Twitter. And it is coaching, it is professional support for folks in our profession of education. It is also consulting around, what's my next move? I spent a year in my school district supporting about 200 leaders who all were aspiring leaders. I taught a course called Aspiring Leaders. And in that course, these are folks who wanted to become principals or assistant principals, department chairs. And I got to spend 90% of my time with folks who didn't make it. So I did the exit conferences. And one of the things I often encourage people to do when it's time to answer those questions is think about the what if. What if I go into this interview with a different graphic than everybody else? What if I decided that I'm gonna tell this story instead of the traditional story when they ask the example of what are your strengths and weaknesses? I want you to think what if all the time, because what if is what gives birth to your ideas. I believe that anybody that hires me right now for anything, I will not lie to you. I believe it is my ideas that they're hiring. Yes, I have skills that match them. However, I know that in an interview or in a networking setup or whatever it is, I am bringing an idea. What if allows me to give birth to my ideas? Casey? Now, I said stay in touch. I did give some information. There's multiple ways to stay in touch with me. And I really do want to stay in touch with you. And I hope as we talk a little bit after this, if I haven't said something that you hope I said, I tried to use examples of my life to speak to our topic today. But as you think about where you are right now in your career, whether you're still a student, you just graduated, you're wondering what's next, or should you move? I want you to think about the what ifs. I want you to think about what threads do you have in your parachute right now? I want you to think about what do I need to not only sustain myself, but to elevate myself. A lot of us are working hard to maintain. I think as a first generation college goer and somebody who uses fear as a tool, for me, it's always not only about sustaining, but moving beyond the moment. Remember, I believe my life is in constant motion. I do. And so in order to be able to move with it, I have to constantly reflect on some of the things I just shared with you. I'd love to answer some questions now and speak directly with folks. Casey, if that's okay.
Sure. So there are a couple of questions in the
Okay.
Q&A, and
Okay.
I am going to turn on the chat for
Okay.
everyone also to be able to
Okay.
ask questions.
Okay. Should I just go through our first one? Okay. It looks like Jeanette. Jeanette is asking, can everyone see the questions or can just I see the questions? Just curious.
I believe you can see the question.
Okay, so Jeanette is asking a question, and Jeanette, I would speak to this, a little. Obviously, our conversation today, the conversation topic, does not center around this, but I can tell you as a woman of color, Jeanette's question or statement is around, the recent events of what's going on in Minnesota and Georgia. And she wants to have an open conversation about race and how it impacts our professional lives. And I can tell you as an African-American woman, it follows me everywhere I go. Sometimes I know that I might be looked at for the job because I'm an African American woman, but I also understand the complexities of being a female leader and being an African American woman. An example, Jeanette, I can give, obviously what's happening right now, it is unfortunate that this has to continue to happen in our country. But as we look at ourselves as professionals, those of us who have come through Johns Hopkins University's doors, at a university where, that, did not necessarily welcome African Americans years ago, I can honestly say to you, there are times where I have to recognize, especially when I'm doing the work of equity in my schools, where I have to recognize that I have to sometimes strike a certain tone in order to communicate to everyone. My school is a lot of races, mixed families, et cetera. And so I am very particular about how I go about my way. It impacts our professional lives every single day. But I also know that it's important that students see me. It is important that all of us are seen, every last one of us, our color, and that we are heard. And so it plays a big part. I see another question here from Liu. I hope I'm saying it right. How do you set your goal when you are pursuing a life that your parents and relatives might not be able to provide much advice? So just to speak to this, by the time I applied for Kent State University, I was considered at that time a ward of the court. So I lived with my grandmother, and so my mother died when I was 12 years old, and my older sister raised me, who is pictured here right behind me on this little photo. She recently passed away. And I will tell you that it is hard to pursue a life that my parents and relatives were not able to give me much advice on. I remember my first call, I was trying to figure out what to take to college. So I had to call a friend that I roller skated with because no one knew. But what it takes is a network. And so I would say to you, if you have not found someone else, a stranger, strangers are supports, strangers are mentors, I'm going to suggest that to you. And I also would say to you that you are not the only one, okay? And so I hope it keeps you encouraged that you are not the only one facing that. I keep in touch, Jenny asked me, how do I keep in touch with my mentors? So with one of my mentors, we just schedule lunch as much as possible. We haven't been able to do that because of this. And I send them text messages. I know it sounds funny. I don't have a magic answer for this. But the other thing I do is I invite them to be a part of things. They're very busy people too. I tend to have mentors that are doing big things. And so they're very busy, but I do try to have like lunch with them, things like that. Ches, I believe, Sanchez. How do you deal with people who try to deter you from achieving your goals and look down on you? I just experienced this recently joining the education sector, despite a very successful television news career. Well, first thing I'm gonna say is, in education, I call schools the largest social institutions there are. So you got 800 to 1,000 people coming into one place every single day. I don't know if this was for schools or not, but you said the education sector. I will tell you, there's a lot of judgment. Because I was young, because people often wondered, how did she get to do this? And she looks so young. I was mistreated a lot as a new teacher, so much so that other teachers had to sort of take up for me. I didn't even know how to retaliate, if you will. But my principal was constantly asking me to do leadership things. And so one thing I would say to you is find a positive network outside your school, outside of your office or division that you work in, if you have to. But I kept myself encouraged because I always knew what I was doing was in the right space. I was in my niche. I knew that, and no one was going to move me from that. Musser Jean Jacques. I'd like to know how to go about finding a mentor while taking online courses. So I actually teach an online course. And one of the things I try to do, and you can do this, you can sort of force your professor's hand a little bit. I don't know if I should give that advice. But what I do is I set up calls with my students, a 10-minute call, just to learn about who they are as a person. And that's probably how, when my class ends, we end up being friends, because I actually set up a 10-minute call. Ask your online professor before the class starts, or right the first week that it starts, if you can talk for 10 minutes. Say, I just want to tell you a little bit about my life and what I'm doing, and hopefully make a professional connection with you later. You can say something like that. Wes, what things have you learned over time in balancing your fear and anxiety with your confidence when starting a new major project? Oh my goodness. For example, a career shift or paradigm shift. Wow, what things have I learned? The first thing I've learned is I've learned how to feed my drive, Miss. I will tell you that because I've gotten a clarity of purpose. Like somebody said to me, why are you starting a company in the middle of a pandemic? You know why? Because I believe I have answers to the solution. I do. I believe what I know and what my experience is, that I have answers to the solutions that we're going to need in education to move and advance students post-COVID or during COVID. So I would say to you, get really clear about what you know. And then as you go to take that big leap, you're going to be scared, you're going to be nervous, you're going to wonder, do I know enough? You got to constantly be learning. So, I mean, last Saturday, I think I spent half my day in free online workshops. Since the pandemic, what I've learned is there's a lot of free information out there, and I go get it. And so if I were you, I would set up some time to do that. All right.
Cheree, I think there are a couple more questions
Okay.
to take, and it looks like we've got two that are focused around the mentoring relationship. So how do you, once you find someone, build that relationship, but also a little bit about how do you find in your busy life, how do you find someone?
And so again, right now, thank you for doing that for me. Right now, how do you find someone? I want you to take inventory of who do you already have access to? Who are the people that you are currently working with or around, wondering about? Now, this is going to sound crazy, but I wrote Oprah 87 times before she wrote me back. I used to write letters before emails. I send cards to people, but I look for people who are doing what I'm doing, and I reach out to them. I simply email them. I simply call them. I ask them to be a thought partner with me. That has become a wonderful way for me to connect with people. So in my career, I'm fortunate that everybody's always looking for answers in education. And because I'm one of those people, I will sometimes, like in my district right now, there's a group of us. I'm an IEP chair, individual education plan chairperson for my school. One of the toughest jobs you'll ever do in education. And so one of the things I did to try and build a network of people and hopefully find a mentor in that is I put together a little group of us that we just meet up, optional meetup online, and we talk. And now out of that has grown someone that I actually deem a mentor now. And so think unconventional ways. Think about unconventional ways to connect with people. Connect with people through your work, and then offer them or ask to, hey, you mind if I call you every month or every 2 weeks or so to talk through this or run something past you? People love to feel like they could, you want their help. And that's a great way to make a mentor or a connection. Was there another question around mentoring?
I think you covered both of them.
Okay.
And maybe we can, there are lots of questions. People
Okay,
are
because
super
I'm trying to
inspired by
follow
your
them.
talk. But maybe we could take one more. Let's see here. Here's a good one.
Okay.
Someone is interested, Winston is interested in how you made the move to be a faculty member at Hopkins from what you were doing.
Ooh, okay, so when I was a student at Hopkins, I remember one of my professors saying to me, I prepare for this class every week, and every time you speak an idea, it makes me think I'm not prepared. And I said, oh no, I thought I'm gonna get a bad grade. This person thinks I'm trying to upstage them. What I realized is I was challenging my professor. And so I'm not real sure why, Winston, someone contacted me and asked me if I wanted to teach a course that I had taken. And to be honest, it was at that time the course I liked the least, and I couldn't believe it. So when I had the opportunity to speak with the dean and others, I remember saying, are you sure you want me? And they hearkened back to an award that I had won at Hopkins when I finished the program. I was the recipient of the Academic Excellence Award, which is top honors in your program. And I was told that they wanted me to bring a new idea, a new perspective to the work. And so I took the leap as an online professor. And then, of course, the great fortune of teaching face-to-face this year. And so I did not do it happily. I was very nervous, and I thought, do I have the chops to be a professor? I do want to be one. And so I will say to you, I knew I wanted to be one. It is one of the things my late sister always talked to me about. And so part of saying yes to it was to fulfill that dream. But I'll tell you, it keeps me sharp. It keeps me learning. It keeps me growing, because students demand greatness from you, and they expect you to know. And so, it wasn't an easy transition. It was difficult. I just felt ready to do it, and I keep growing so that I can stay good at it.
Thank you so much for such a really wonderful talk. Very, very inspiring. There are many more questions that we haven't answered, but I think I am correct. You'd be willing to follow up with people.
I would.
Put you in touch and have further discussions, and maybe answer some of the questions that we did not get to.
Sure.
I want to just take a minute to thank you so much for sharing your story. A really, really wonderful thoughts, setting goals, being authentic, being courageous. And I hope that this is an example to everybody that's joined us today, that we as a community can be each other's threads in our respective parachutes. So, I just want a virtual round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I'm reading your thank yous. Thank you. Thank you so much. You have a way to contact me. I consider all originally 140 of you, whoever it was. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
So I want to turn things over to my colleague, Casey Miller, to give us some marching orders and some information about the rest of today's session. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Cheree. It was very inspiring, very informational, and a lot of good insight. I'm so happy that you were able to take the time to be with us today. For everyone else that's still with us, I know that you have a lot more questions, and we have some life design educators here who I'm going to promote to panelists so that they can answer your questions. So if you have more questions and you want to stay on and talk about mentoring, talk about networking, how do I do it? How does that conversation begin? How do I do it without being anxious or feeling strange? Our life design educators can work with you there. So I will stop recording now.